To 755 is real. I'm David O'Brien, Braves writer at The Athletic, and with my co-host, former Braves reliever Eric O'Flaherty. What's up, Eric?
What up, Dave?
Oh man, what up? Well, I think we did the last show the day after the Braves clinched, right?
Yep.
Well, here's what's happened since then. Acuna got hurt. Max Fried has a blister, or the makings of a blister, so he's skipping a start. The Braves got destroyed in 4 games. They got waxed in Miami by the resurgent Marlins, who are fighting for a playoff spot. And really, there was not one thing positive except for Matt Olson hitting this club record 52nd home run, which was indeed a positive. But other than that, the Braves have gotten wrecked by the Marlins and the Phillies for four consecutive games. And last night they got beat by the Phillies 7-1 and gave up 5 home runs. Kyle Wright has been back for 2 starts, and neither one of them has been the least bit encouraging. I know Snicker said he's doing great for a guy who's missed all of spring training and the season, but he's not doing great. He's made 2 starts, and they've not gone very well. He gave up 3 home runs last night, which is the second most of his career. Other than that, how you doing, man?
None of it's going to matter. That's how I look at it.
Exactly right.
One of my proudest moments in my career was, because we always talk about not riding the roller coaster, getting too wrapped up in what's happened recently. And it's easy as a player because you have to, or you fall apart. But one of my proudest moments, B-Mac, who'd given me so much good advice and I'd offered him nothing, in our entire relationship. I think it was like 2012, 11 or 12, maybe 13, whatever his last year with the Braves was. He was off to a slow start. He was struggling in spring training. Something was going on. They were moving him around the lineup or something. And he was kind of getting caught up in the noise. He was feeling it from management. He was hearing some stuff in the papers. And I was like, look, man, the season's so long. You're not even going to remember this. When we look back and ask what was going on in April, you're not even going to remember it. And that actually stuck with him. He's like, you're right. This is just a short period and we just move on, and there'll be a new story next week or the next week after that. I mean, even if you look at it right now, it's like, what? I don't remember what's going on with the Braves in April. I know Harris struggled. That's it. That's all I can remember. Yeah. And that's kind of how the season. And Ozuna was struggling. So you have to rack your brain.
And the fact that the two of them have been on fire basically ever since then.
Yep.
Says a lot about what you're just alluding to.
Yep.
The baseball season is so long.
There's so much shit that happens.
You can't even get too concerned about a month-long struggle, much less 4 games after a team clinches. Now, it came out purposefully to start like that because people who think we're just going to blow smoke up your ass. We're not going to. We're going to say the way it is. But at the same time, because I mean, there's idiots out there that think the Braves will revoke my credential if I'm negative. Yeah. I don't give a shit what the Braves think about what I write. I want them to like it because it's easier to deal with players if they like what you're writing. But I'm not beholden to I don't write for the Braves. I write for the fans, the people who want to know about the team. It's just easier to write about a team who's doing well and a team who's cooperative, and the Braves are. But they have no say whatsoever. And I know some idiots out there, and I call you idiots because that's what you are if you don't listen to us when we try to tell you that no organization has ever told me what I can or can't write or suggested I don't write something and then said, well, you didn't write it, so we're taking your credential. That doesn't happen. And if you believe that, you're so stubborn that you think you know more about other businesses than you do the people who are actually in them. And that's why I called you an idiot, because if you believe that, you are an idiot.
Yeah.
Anyway.
I remember you being one of the guys, one of the few that would ask the tough questions, and we didn't like you as much as the other writers because of that.
4 games, though. If you look back, the Braves are the only team in the majors that has not had a losing streak longer than 4 games. They have not had a 5-game losing streak in the past 3 years. Okay? That's amazing. And that says a lot about the clubhouse culture, the team, the consistency, how they do not get wrapped up and ride the roller coaster. And that starts at the top with Snit. And then the veterans that they've brought in have adapted to that or had it when they came over. But that trickles down. And this team doesn't get stressed, and and you can't tell in the clubhouse. We said this before. If they've won 4 in a row or lost 4 in a row, that's only slightly exaggerated. You really can't tell in the clubhouse when this team loses a game 7-1 or wins it 7-1. They might have the music turned up when we first go in there, which they don't after a loss. But other than that, the mood of the guys, when they walk out the door, get their cars, they're the same, man.
And that's why they've won 6 straight.
Right. Unless it's one guy that had a terrible game, cost him the game, and he might feel bad and leave with his head down going, Jesus, that cost us the game. But the team as a whole, and they're going to try to bring that guy up too, but the team as a whole doesn't go home dispirited. Like they're right now, they're not going home going, the wheels are off, like so many fans are saying, the wheels are off. That's not what this team is thinking. And if you look at it rationally and say, okay, what does this mean?
Nothing.
The wheels aren't off. They played a Marlins team that if you look what the Marlins did before the Braves went down there, the Marlins are playing well right now. They are fighting. They're back in the playoff race. Yeah. They have so much more to play for right then in those games immediately after the Braves clinched than the Braves did. Now, I know you're out there going, they got to keep the foot on the pedal because they do want to keep home field advantage. But it's only natural for the first couple of games after you clinch to, go, okay, well, and then you ran up against a Phillies team that you're facing Zach Wheeler, one of the best pitchers in the national in baseball last night, who pitched a good Zach Wheeler game, a very good Zach Wheeler game. And you're throwing your guy out there who's still trying to kind of get his feet under him, figure out what he's got this year. And, I mean, he's made 2 starts since he had 4 months on the IL. It was not a good matchup. Now tonight, you've got Strider going against Christopher Sanchez, who pitched well against the Braves last week in Philly. Now we'll see what goes on tonight. And like I said, they haven't had a 5-game losing streak in years, like 3 years. I should know that off the top of my head, but I don't. But this is the 4th 4-game losing streak this year. Every time they've come out of it and gone on a good little spurt afterwards. Every time.
It's baseball. I remember they lost a couple in Oakland, and it's like, how are you going to lose to those guys? That was, I think, early in the year. And
they lost a series at Oakland. Then they went to Arizona and beat a really hot Arizona team, Zach Gallen, who was the best pitcher in baseball at home at that point, beat him badly.
And that's probably the hardest thing to appreciate about baseball is that you can't just get LeBron James and you win every series or game you're supposed to. Like Mike Trout and Ohtani are on the Angels. This doesn't seem to make a difference. And baseball is like that, where the worst major league team can beat the best major league team any day, any series. And you get to the postseason.
No doubt.
When the postseason starts, nobody's going to look back at this and be like, shit, if they would have played better in Miami. Yeah. It's going to be whatever happens that day and whatever team shows up that day. I mean, in a sense, you'd want to get this out of your system because it's always coming. There's always a slump coming. There's always a rough stretch coming. You have to weather the storm, turn it around, and keep playing. So, I mean, if there was a time to do it, now is the time, and you want to go in the postseason hot if you can.
Yeah, and the other thing, people that are so concerned about the Dodgers catching them for best record in the NL, the Dodgers were playing like crap too until they went to Seattle and swept a Seattle team, which is struggling mightily. Seattle is the wheels are off the wagon with Seattle. So the Dodgers went in and swept them, but look what the Dodgers did before that. They were playing really poorly. So now they've won, I think, 4 in a row. They won again last night. But they were right. They only gained like a game on the Braves in that week and a half long stretch. So the team, I think, that is a legitimate concern about catching them would be the Orioles. Because the Orioles are playing really well, and they've got a great home atmosphere. All these good teams have great home atmospheres. The Dodgers obviously do, just out there, but the Braves just won 3 out of 4 out there, remember? But the Orioles, if the Braves are fortunate enough to get to the World Series, and they're certainly not looking ahead to that, but if they are fortunate, you would certainly rather have home field advantage than go up against the Orioles team that has waited so long to be really good again. And I can't even imagine how loud that place would be if they win a couple of playoff series and advance to the World Series.
I'm the patron saint of Birdland. When in 2008, when they started that Birdland thing, I gave a walk-off homer and a go-ahead double in back-to-back days. That place was loud, but that's just a little tidbit for you. All their fans were calling me that for the rest of the season.
That was when the Braves were up there?
Seattle in 2008.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
But even when I came back the next year, I wanted no part of Birdland. But I think it would be good. I mean, I think that's the best way to look at it, though, is worst case scenario, they could lose every game the rest of the season. All they give up is home field to the Dodgers and Orioles.
Yeah. Yeah. And, I said the only thing good had happened was Olson's home run. Waino winning his 200th win last night. Here, Waino at the very end of his career gets the 200 which I thought was impossible when he pitched against the Braves a couple weeks because he was terrible that night. And he gave up the 4 homers and, he's throwing in mid-upper 80s. I thought there's no way. So what's he done?
He was throwing 85, a few pitches.
And he's pitched great against 2 really good teams to get his 199th and 200th wins. So good for him. I was so happy to see that. But him winning last night against the Brewers assured the Braves home field for the first round of the playoffs.
There it is.
So not that was ever in doubt, but that for that to officially be what did it was kind of funny. I know the bitter people out there look at Waino's 200 wins and they start thinking, okay, we gave up what to give, Waino could have had 200 wins. Okay. You're assuming that if Waino would have stayed with the Braves, they would have kept him the entire time.
Yeah.
When they didn't even keep Tom Glavine, John Smoltz, or Greg Maddux for the entire rest of their career. None of those guys.
Yeah, I mean, a little bit of it because he stayed with St. Louis that whole time, but still, I mean,
right.
Those trades are so hard to look at too because some guys click in certain cities. Like you don't even know if he turns into the guy that he turned into in Atlanta. I mean, he's pitching to Yachty for all those years,
and he's in the shadow of great pitchers here. I mean, wasn't going to get the chance that he got in St. Louis. He worked with Yachty all of those years until this year.
Yep.
I mean, they were 330 starts together, something like that. They set the record last year.
Yeah.
But Waino, he's an institution in St. Louis. I mean, I went to a barbecue restaurant there, a famous one, Pappy's, and there's a smoker outside with his name on it. They have like 4 smokers, and they're all named for somebody famous there, some icon there, and one of them is Waino. But the Cardinals have kept a few players for their entire careers, like Molina. But the Braves haven't done that. They didn't keep Freddie Freeman his entire career. And they don't do it with pitchers when they hit free agency and they become really expensive.
Yep.
They just haven't done it. So I think I think you're kidding yourself if you think they would have kept Waino that entire time and he would have had the exact same career here. I mean, it's just not the way it works. But anyway,
good for him.
Be happy for the guy. Yeah. I mean, he's a good dude. If you ever met him, so many people here have met him at functions and various, because he used to come back to Georgia all the time. We got a lot of people that still live on Sanibel Island. Isn't that where he's at? Sanibel Island? Not Sanibel. What am I thinking?
Santa Maria?
No, it's not Sanibel. What the hell am I? That's Georgia. I mean, that's Florida. Georgia. God, I'm losing my mind.
I don't know what you're talking about.
He's from the coast in Georgia, the island right there. A nice place. Anyway, St. Simons.
Okay.
God, I couldn't grasp. That's where he's from. St. Simons. Cool place. So Kyle Wright, man, I don't know what your level of concern with him is, but I just don't think that there's a whole lot more time left for him to get. He's built up to 80 pitches, and so that's not the problem. But he just doesn't look like the same guy. He was, like he said, he was yanking some curveballs last night. He doesn't have the same movement on his pitches. Location's not the same. He's throwing pretty much as hard, not quite as hard. But, I mean, we're just seeing the result of a guy that missed over 4 months of the season. And after starting spring training late, he had an abbreviated spring training that, he missed 3 weeks and then bled into the season. He started the season on the IL, but he didn't get like a full spring training. And then his rehab assignment was cut short too because they had to get him here. He only made like 3 rehab starts. So nothing about it has gone really well. And that shoulder, has been a problem since the winter when he got the cortisone shot in January.
Worth a try. I mean, that's how I look at it. If I'm the Braves, if realistically, if he can have 2 good starts before the season's over, you give him a chance. I don't think one does it because you see guys all the time come back. They have one good one and then a couple bad ones. You'd want to see him really, look convincing in back-to-back starts before you give him a playoff start. And that's why he's in a tough spot, because the last thing you want him doing is pressing. And you saw the first game back. It's all the adrenaline of it. All right, you get a free pass. Get yourself acclimated. The second game, it's kind of similar. You know, I mean, the stuff doesn't look like it's there. And it's like, shit, now I only got a couple starts to look convincing if I want to be on this postseason roster.
Yeah.
But there's also going to be time to, you know, throw sim games and whatever it is and maybe get in the second or third round of the playoffs and make an impression. And even if you come in long and deal like he did that one year in the playoffs. But yeah, I mean, it's a tough spot because I always thought starters need about a month to look right. Same with Max. Like Max came back in that first one. I was like, shit, he just changed my mind. Maybe starters can come back and just be fired right away. But then he kind of showed it. You know, he showed the rust. And I think that's kind of just what seems to happen. But if Kyle came out and had one really good start and one dominant back-to-back, I'd trust him in the postseason.
Yeah. And another scenario is he can come out and just pitch well enough to warrant maybe a bullpen spot, depending on what the matchups are. And he could pitch out of the pen for the first round. And who knows, something could happen to a start or whatever, and he could be available for the second round to start. So a lot of things can happen. But the important thing is that he just makes progress in these next two starts before the end of the season. He said he felt a lot better last night, even though the results weren't there. He said he felt a lot better. Yeah. But he said it's time. I gotta realize my stuff. I've got what I've got this year. This isn't last year. I need to pitch with what I've got this year and get out and do better.
That's the biggest quote that I could hear from him is I've got what I've got this year.
Yeah.
Because so many times when you're coming back from an injury or something like that, you're looking at old film, you're looking at your 95-mile-an-hour fastball, how much it was moving, what you were doing, and you're trying to turn back the clock and be that guy. And it's like, there's no time for that. So for me, that tells him he's got the right mindset of, look, this might be what I have, and I have to figure out how to get outs with it. Because when you're caught trying to like find that 95, it might not be there at all this year.
Right.
That turbo sinker might not be there. And when you're caught with that, you know, it's almost a distraction from how do I get outs with this current stuff that I have. When you can embrace, all right, this is what I got this year. Maybe my slider sucks. Maybe I don't have my changeup. Here's what I have. How do I get outs with this? That's the mindset that moves you forward. And then next year you get to spring training and it's probably all there again. You don't have to worry about it. But there's no time for him to find that this year. He's just got to take what he has and get outs.
I guess the biggest positive would be he threw 78 pitches last night and the shoulder wasn't an issue.
Yeah.
He said he felt fine. So that's what you're worried about, you know, with the shoulder having been not subsided with the cortisone shot in January, landed him on the IL for part of spring training, landed him on the IL again after making 5 starts in April and May. So that's the positive, because if it was barking again, then you'd be worried about, okay, now he's going to go into the offseason wondering, do I need surgery? Do I try another cortisone shot? That isn't an issue right now. At least he hasn't said so. So he said he felt good, which would be a huge positive going forward if he can get through this season, maybe the postseason without any issues with the health-wise. Then he can look forward to having a normal shoulder and a normal spring.
Well, and think about, I mean, it's a lot about what we just talked about, but if he were able to have a good start or two, make an impact in the postseason.
Yeah.
You go into the offseason and none of the shit that you went through the whole year mattered because you got to contribute on the biggest stage. So, I mean, that's where your eyes got to be. And that's a way to erase everything that happened this whole year and feel
just like
good.
In 2021.
Yep.
When he came in
exactly.
And pitched in the postseason, the World Series.
All it takes. That's the good thing about baseball.
That World Series appearance, it
started his whole career over. Yeah,
exactly. And then he comes in last year and leads the majors in wins with 21. I mean, he was terrific last year. That's why and I asked him about that, and he said, yeah, it's infuriating. It's frustrating to know that the only reason that he's not pitching well this year is because he hasn't pitched much, you know?
Yeah.
Right now, it's not because he's hurt. It's because he was hurt, and he hasn't pitched enough to be pitching well. Yeah. He just didn't build up, and he hasn't gotten everything honed, and everybody else is at the top of their game. So here's a guy that went 21-5 last year, the only 20 game winner in the majors, and he won 21. 3.19 ERA, 30 starts, 180 innings, 174 strikeouts. This year, he's 0-3 with a 7.71 ERA and 7 starts. I mean, 28 strikeouts, 16 walks, and 5 homers allowed in 25 innings.
Yep. So
That's
if I'm
gotta
him,
be
that's
hard.
my mindset. I'm putting this all behind me with a strong finish. And then next year's a fresh start, and we'll have a good season.
Yeah. The Braves have got the third highest ERA in the majors in September. They won those first 2 in the month, and then the pitching has really been a problem, starting and relieving. The starters, they got some short starts. Relievers, several guys that have pitched so well all year, like Tonkin, Jimenez pitched well for most of the year, have struggled lately. Kirby Yates had a bad outing a couple nights ago. Just a lot of guys that really were kind of carrying a big load on this pen for much of the year are struggling right now. Iglesias, who was unhittable for much of the season, has struggled in his recent outings. Tonkin has given up a run or more in 5 consecutive outings. 3 of those multiple runs. Snit defended him last night. Said, "Oh, it was great. He ate those 3 innings last night," but he gave up 2 bombs last night, including that monstrous home run from Schwarber, 480 some feet, second longest ever at Truist.
480,000 feet.
Good Lord, that was just a massive home run.
He hit that exact same homer in San Diego in the playoffs that went into the upper deck in right field in San Diego.
Yeah, man, he hits them in spots that, damn, that was, whew. Only Acuna hits him as far as he does. There we go. I just got a beep that Jesse Chavez reinstated from the 60. Back with the squad. He's back with the squad. Lucas Luque DFA'd to make room. Luque pitched last night. Actually got a good inning. But they needed space, so there you go. DFA'd. Be the 3rd time Luque's been DFA'd this year, right? I think so.
Yeah.
So Chavez is back. That's good. That could be just what the pen needs, not just because of how he was pitching before he got hurt, but what he brings. Because right now they might be a little down. He was the ringleader for the last few years when he's been there, as far as keeping everything loose constantly, even in the worst of times. So right now, with a bunch of guys struggling and some of those guys maybe worried about their jobs or whatever, he's the perfect guy to add down there, as you know. You've been with him down there. You know what he can bring to a pen.
Yeah, I mean that's what you need. You need a bullpen coach that knows how to keep it loose. When you have a panicking bullpen coach, it just adds stress before you even step on the mound. And you need at least 1 or 2 veterans that know, like, this shit isn't a big deal. It's the same game. You go out, you pitch. You have a bad day today, you go back out tomorrow, you pitch again. Like, you really need guys that are laid back and understand the stress and understand how to diffuse it. And he's one of those guys. I mean, he's going to have fun and show up, and he is the same guy every day. And you can't really learn that without all the shit he's been through and the struggles he's been through. And the guy's been released and traded and played for, seems like, every team in baseball. So if he has a bad game, he's going to show up tomorrow with a smile on his face.
Yeah. And he pitched well in his rehab assignment. Pitched really well. A couple of outings ago, struck out the side or struck out 2 out of 3 in a perfect inning. So if he's on top of his game like he was before the injury, that's a huge plus. I mean, this is a guy, remember, he was the best reliever they had in the first half. He was pitching well enough to make the All-Star game, or people were talking about it. He was going to get consideration. Would have been the first time of his career. Would have been so cool because he turned 40 while he was on the IL, he turned 40.
Yeah.
So I'm just glad he's back to pitch in the majors at 40. Because if that hadn't happened for some reason, that would have kind of sucked, because that was a big goal of his.
Yeah.
After his college coach told him like 10 years ago, the way you pitch, your mechanics, you can pitch till you're 40, past 40. He was like, he didn't believe it until a few years ago.
Yeah, he's kind of an alien. I mean, Huddy was an alien. Chavi's an alien, where their bodies just work so well in a way that they could pick any routine in the game and they're still going to be able to go out there and throw strikes and have clean mechanics. But the one thing that you look at with him is he was coming into those games where you were in a big jam in the 7th, that swing games all the time. And Tonkin's come in, and look, Tonkin's been great all year, but he's struggled in the last week. And you see how those games have blown up when you don't get it done in those situations. And just having a few other guys to call on. If Tonkin had a rough day the day before, somebody else to go out and throw into that situation and see if they get it done and ride them for a bit it's really nice to have.
Yeah, Tonkin, the last 2 weeks, 4 of the 5 outings they lost. 4 of his 5 outings they lost, and he gave up runs in every one of them.
Yeah.
In addition to Chavi being back, starting rehab assignments tonight with AAA, 3 guys, all of whom could help. It's definitely one of them, Nick Anderson.
Yeah.
Remember, he really pitched some big innings before he went down. Nick Anderson, Daysbel Hernandez, and Colin McHugh are all beginning rehab assignments tonight at AAA, in addition to Chavez being back with the Bravos. So
I look at it too, like if you happen to have a starter scuffle, you know, in the second or third inning, and you have like Kyle Wright, Chavez, and McHugh down there.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a chance to keep a game close and not burn through the horses you want to use at the end of the game. And you get Anderson back too. I mean, this is why you say it. You're like, fuck, it doesn't matter, because this bullpen you're worried about the bullpen struggling. There could be 3 new guys in the pen by the time the postseason starts, and it could completely change that quick.
Yeah, and some of these guys, I think they didn't never say it that Tonkin's showing wear and tear. But if you look at where he's pitched, man, he was out of the big leagues for a long time, pitching indie ball, and now you're pitching in these big games. They're just emotional. They're expending a lot of energy and pitching great for that guy pitched a lot of big innings this year for coming. That's a movie waiting to happen. The way he's pitched. If he's to, it'll be kind of like Matzik. If he's to be a big part of the bullpen down, you know, in a World Series run, for instance, that's a movie waiting to happen. What this guy's gone through. So,
yeah,
if he's showing some wear and tear, it's only normal. Showing some effect of the grind, mental and physical.
Yeah, so, he's at 75 innings out of the pen.
Yeah.
I mean, he's 42 games, but he's coming to a lot of big jams. I mean,
bigger as the years gotten on, bigger and bigger.
I think he's had 1 full beat me up major league season under his belt. And that was with Minnesota in 2016. He threw 65 games.
A long time ago.
Yeah. So I think you see a lot of relievers when they're getting that first kind of chance at a big workload. I mean, I told you that story when I had like a 2 ERA in August.
Yeah.
And with Seattle and finished with a 4.5. It's hard to close out your first big season, but you go through September and next year you come back to this point. And it's like, shit, I remember how this felt. I got to lock in even more. I got to make pitches. I might not be able to blow it by him up in the zone, so I have to just dial it in a little bit more and play a little more careful. And you go through these things and you learn from them. But he's only had 1 chance to really even feel this in his career.
Our guy, fuck Bill Gates, PHUCK Bill Gates, says, would Wright pitch to the Braves lineup during the playoff bye week if he doesn't he means make the playoff roster? That's a perfect guy that could pitch. And when the Braves are going to need to pitch, I think a couple of simulated type games, and he is a perfect candidate if he's not on the roster for the first round, or they don't plan to put him on that. That would be a perfect guy to have, and he could get his innings in, keep building, you know, from where he is now, go like 5 innings, you know, 6 innings if necessary, if they're not going to have him on the first round roster. And there's a couple other candidates for that too, that if they're not on that first round roster, or they're going to pitch out of the pen, you could have them make Bryce Elder, for instance. I think he will be in it, obviously, because I don't think Wright will be in the rotation. But you could have a guy, the extra starter, pitch in those games, and also obviously they're going to have more relievers than they need with these guys that are coming back. So it should have no problem at all putting together 9 innings worth of in a sim game if they want to against their hitters, which they really should. And I'm sure they're really aware of that too, but I think they need to do whatever it takes to stay sharp in that downtime this year and avoid what happened last year, if at all possible, if it'll help at all. Yeah.
I think that teams are kind of still in the early stages of figuring out the best thing to do with this time off. Yeah.
With the bye. Yeah. Because it's not like it's had a lot of experience and nobody has. So what's best to how to treat it. And
used to be a couple days.
Yeah. And now you're talking about 4 days, and if you're like the Braves were last year when you really clinched with the Mets series, when you swept, that Marlins series was meaningless. They just had to win 1 game, which they did. Really, it's a week between meaningful games, and you're going to have a similar scenario this year. Although this year you do have plenty to play for with that home field advantage, because when you go into that last series of the year against the Nationals, you still got 7 games left against the Nationals. that plays very well for the Braves. I mean, that's not a very good team. You got a real chance to make hay against them. After the 2 against Philly, you got 4 at Washington. It's not going to be, big atmosphere there at all. They have nothing left to play for. So you got a chance to really, and then you finish with the Nationals, 3 games. So, but the Dodgers and Orioles are breathing right down the neck. There's no way you're just going to go, there's nothing to play for and relax. Not that the Braves would do that anyway, but you're going to have something to play for. So,
no.
Last year you really didn't. Last year you didn't. The Marlins series, you had nothing left to play for in that series. Once you clinched in that second game, which you knew you were going to win one of them anyway.
I don't know, just to hammer home the point of how much I don't think it matters. Obviously you want to go in the postseason playing well, but last year they went into the postseason on a tear.
Yeah.
Hot as you can get, bounced in the first round. Postseason is just a different animal. It's a reset.
And last year, it can't be stated enough how big the injury to Strider, which had kept him out for a couple of weeks, and he was not himself. 2 innings, he pitched great, and then he just had nothing left. And then the sickness for the flu, where Fried was throwing up in the trash can in that last home start, lost like 10 pounds or more for a guy
without 10 pounds to lose.
Can't lose 2 pounds. I mean, He has no body fat.
Yeah.
And he just wasn't himself. Well, that was 2 of the first 3 right there. So that was more important than anything else. Far more important than the Phillies getting hot, which they did. But the Phillies were lucky to get past the first round.
Yep.
They were lucky to get in. Then they were lucky to get past the wild card round. And then they ran up against the Braves team that was – those 2 things really shot the Braves in the foot, man, in both feet. So you just don't know when something that's going to happen, which is why they're being so careful with Fried.
Yeah,
it's good that smart. He told them because he got the hot spot on the index finger. It hasn't been the blisters. He had an IL stint last year for the blister early on in June, I think it was. This time he could feel it. He's been through it enough. He had IL stints in the minors, and it's been he's had a good grasp of a good control of it in the last few years. But for him to not have too much pride and try to keep pitching through that in Philly the other day,
he's being smart.
Yeah, I was wondering why he came out. They didn't say anything about it after that game. But it was a hot spot, and they're skipping the start this week. So he'll start one of the games against the Nationals. And I think they caught it enough where it's not even a blister yet. You can just feel it starting. So then you shut it down. You don't throw off that, or you probably tape that finger when you're just throwing. You keep, when you're keeping your arm in shape. So, because that could have been huge. I mean, if he gets a blister, comes out of the start against the Phillies like yesterday with a blister, then your postseason's in jeopardy because those games can linger, man, for weeks.
Yeah, well, because it's so hard to keep your arm going and not put pressure on that spot and not change how you throw and get, messed up with the pressure you're putting on the ball. I thought it was, that's the most important thing is just that he recognized it and shut it down, and he'll still have time to build up. And when you're not in a game, you can put a little like finger sleeve over it and protect it. You can put the tough skin. You can put all this stuff that you can't use in a game. That's when it gets torn up again. But they got to have him.
People that might not know, you can't pitch with tape over it or some see-through stuff. You can't anything that could affect the ball. They will not let you use. So
especially now,
that's why blisters are so tough. Yeah, and they check your hands now too, obviously. So, that to say that they need him, that's an understatement. I mean, they've got to have Max Fried. Yeah.
They got to have him. They got to have Strider.
They got to have Strider, and they need Charlie to pitch well. He doesn't have to pitch great, but he's got to pitch well and get to 5-6 innings into a game. Ideally, I mean that's what you don't want to have to give him the hook early. He's having one of his bad innings in the second inning. So, but I like Charlie in the postseason. His pedigree, I think that's going to come to the fore. That's important. He's pitched a ton in the postseason in huge games. Yeah. So, and answered the bell every time, just about every time. Yep. So, it's not ideal. I know everybody just gets anxious because, you don't want to see your team losing, but and you think, okay, now the wheels are coming off and they're having a bad September, but just keep in mind where they are. This offense is still third best OPS in September in the majors, even though they're 6-9 in their last 15 games. And the pitching is so much better to go through it now than to go through it 2 weeks from now. They got plenty of time to get this turned around, get back into a good groove. So it's much better to do it now than that last week of the season where you go into the off days, the break between the first series going, okay, we got to get it back together. You got time now to put it. And like I said, you're facing the Nationals 7 times. You got a chance to really do some good starts and really pound them,
pad your stats a little, go into the postseason feeling good about a performance.
And between those 2 National series, you're facing the Cubs. You talk about the wheels falling off. The Cubs, all of a sudden, they went from being, it was going to be the Braves face the Phillies or the Cubs. Now the Cubs are fighting for their lives, and they're not going to be in it right now the way they're going.
Yeah, and that's when you should be panicking. If you're a fan of these teams that are fringe going to make the playoffs, when you lose 2 out of 3 to a bad team, you're like, we just blew it. We might not make the postseason now, but not in the Braves case.
Yeah, and but Arizona and the Marlins, 2 resurgent teams, and that right now one of those are going to end up facing the Phillies, and the Braves will face the winner of that. A game of the division series. You can look at it however you want. I mean, you can look at it as the Phillies are scary. Some people think because they have that lineup they have, but the Braves also look at it as they've handled the Phillies every time they faced them in big series, except for the division series when there were contributing factors. Obviously, it was mitigated by the injury and the illness. So
the thing that's scary about the Phillies is just that they have that nuclear option the Braves have, where they could put up a 6 spot. They can be out of a game and right back in it. And that's one of the toughest things to combat. It's so nice when you face a team that's just got this lights out pitching and an okay offense, and you wind up putting a 3 spot on Scherzer. You're like, shit, we got this in the bag. But you jump up 5-0 in the first 2 innings to Philly, you can bet that they're probably going to do something and get back in it. Those are the toughest games to win.
William Ken Anderson just did some research, said the Braves' last 5-game losing streak was in September of 2017, over 800 games ago.
6 years.
Is it that far? We were looking at this earlier in the year when they had a 4-game. I don't remember it being that far back, but I'll take your word for it. I'll find out as soon as we get off this thing.
I bet I got one of those losses. had a rough 17.
Man, I'm just looking at a couple of questions here. Acuna, that was the other huge thing. I'd be remiss not to mention. Acuna missed the 2 games Saturday, Sunday in Miami. That was really smart. He had this calf tightness. It wasn't a strain or it wasn't a pull, and they got him off that turf because even though he did it coming out of the box, he was stressing the calf running in the outfield, the cleats digging into that artificial turf, grippy. It's real grippy. And a guy like that was so fast and powerful that running all the time in the outfield, they didn't want him to risk making that worse than it was. So he was back in there last night. Took him out in the 9th inning just because they were getting beat 7-1 and get him off his feet. But he did finally had a double last night, and he tested it before, sprinted and everything. That's huge, obviously. Huge. Never mind his pursuit of 40-40. It's back on, but I
want him to get it.
He's three bombs, man. He could have done that even with a sore calf, but it certainly helps if because they're not going to play him with a sore calf. You can't tell him not to run. That's just everything he does is running fast.
There's a lot more to lose than gain.
Yeah. So he played last night, went 8 innings, and that's huge. That's huge. Both catchers have really struggled since the All-Star break. Yeah, compared to, you forget how great Sean Murphy was before the break, man. When his OPS, he was OPS over 1,000 for a while there, leading the majors, leading the league. If you had enough PAs to qualify. They were him and Darno were really. It was not even close as far as the best 1-2 catching combo for much of the season. So but they'll get it back for the postseason. Get a little rest. They're giving Murphy some time to rest. He played a lot, man.
A lot.
First 2/3 of the season.
It felt like Darno never saw the field in the first half.
Yeah, now he's playing more, as much or more. So that's more just resting Murphy and let him catch his wind here. So anyway, here we go. You got 2 more games in this Philly series. Then you go to Washington to play 4. You talk about the energy level going down. I was impressed, man, with the Marlins crowds. They weren't huge, but they were a lot bigger than they have been, and they made a lot of noise. It was noise in that place where felt like you could hear that the music just rattling off the roof in recent years. You could hear the air conditioner in there sometimes, but
anywhere with the roof.
It wasn't artificial noise this time. It was actually people screaming. They were fired up for him. So And last night, did you see they got screwed last night? That foul ball home run that Soler hit. It was fair. Then they called it foul. It was so high, they got to raise some of these foul poles in some of these places. They're not high enough, and it went over the top of the foul pole. And it was initially ruled fair. Then the umpires overruled it, ruled it foul. So then Skip, the Marlins manager, challenged it, and they said there wasn't enough evidence to overturn it, even though they had already overturned it themselves, and they ended up losing 2-1. So that was rough, man.
I didn't see that.
Which could be a really important game for them. Jake Berger's playing his ass off since they got him from the White Sox.
He reminds me of Billy Butler. Braves didn't get him out.
The twice torn Achilles guy. So Soroka's got to be loving it, watching this guy. And he's a load, man, running hard at about 250, 60 pounds. So
that ball he hit out off of Yates, I can't believe how hard he hit that ball.
All right, so you got Strider and Sanchez tonight, the young lefty who pitched well for the Phillies up there in Philly. And then you got Bryce Elder against Aaron Nola in the series finale on Wednesday. That's an afternoon game, 12:20 Eastern, by the way. So then up to Washington. So 4 games. Let's see if the Braves can once again avoid a 5-game streak. Oh, excuse me. Sorry. And we'll talk to you guys again after what is today? Today's Tuesday. So we'll talk again probably Friday after maybe the first game of that Nationals series. All right, everybody. Thanks for contributing and the questions and all that. And we appreciate it. 755 is real.